Hello folks, welcome back to Refit and Sail. My name's George Isted, I am the Solent Boat Butler. This is a Contessa 32 from the mid-70s that is with me for a moderately extensive refit. Yes, it is pouring with rain outside. I apologise if you can hear that over the mics, but if I don't record this video now, it's never going to happen and I won't be able to get another film out to you in a timely manner. Wow, it really is pouring with rain now. You can probably hear that. You must be able to hear that. Anyway, this video is all about replacing these hatches. So above me is the middle hatch on this Contessa, and I also replaced the forward hatch. That sounds like a really simple job. Normally it is, but not this time. It took a little bit longer than planned. So come along for the ride and you can watch me getting very frustrated with how much time it took to replace these two hatches. So I've been umming and ahhing a little bit about actually doing this video because when I recorded most of the material for this video about 6 weeks ago, something like that, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, I had a bit of a problem with my mics and it was user error. It wasn't a fault of DJI. These mics work brilliantly when you switch them on, but when you don't switch them on or they're not linked to the receiver, they don't work so well. You'll be surprised to hear. So I've got the difficult problem of piecing together a video out of lots of clips, some of which have got sound of me talking on them, some of which haven't, which I'm possibly going to have to narrate over or do something with. So, and I'm hoping I can come up with something that is usable, watchable, and moderately interesting for my viewers. So, what I normally do with these hatches, it's normally fairly straightforward. You simply unscrew the old one, clean up all the old sealant, stick the new one down, drill new holes, having filled the old holes, screw it up, bit of sealant, job done. Really easy. With this boat, as always, it's the gift that keeps on giving sometimes, and I did have to do quite a bit of extra work to make it all look nice on the inside. So, I'll start with the forward hatch. Let's roll the videos that I took a few weeks ago. Here's a view from the inside of the forward hatch, and what you can see is it's got this kind of paint or some other coating that's been put around the inside of the hatch, and I think that has been done to cover up, or I thought at this stage it had been done to cover up this damage. You can see where the paint has been lifting slightly, so that it looks like there's a whole bunch of cracks and bits and pieces in there which are pretty unsightly, so that's going to require some investigation. So first job is to remove the hatch. I get my little Bosch screwdriver out and whip all the screws out and take a look. There's a whole bunch of sealant here that needs removing, so this is almost like a butyl type sealant that was used. It was kind of soft mostly to scrape off, and that's all now gone. The hatch has been removed, the sealant is all off, but it has left me with the issue of what to do with the coating that is on that kind of looks like paint. I think it was paint. I'd quite like at this stage to have removed it so that I didn't damage the gel coat that's underneath, but the suspicion was that there was some damage there that needed to be repaired. There's also a little bit of a lip around the top because it was a flanged base or a lipped base that went down into the hole very slightly, and that left a little bit of a lip on the inside that needed removing and taking back. So I removed that lip with a little scraper. It came off really easily, and then get to do some sanding, glorious, glorious sanding on the inside to remove that paint and see what the damage is like underneath. So here's that hatch opening with all the sanding done. I'm just having a good feel around just to check there aren't any hidden high spots, which I don't think there is, but what you can see at the very top edge of that opening is an area that is going to need some filling and repairing, and that's not actually showing the cracked area, which is on the starboard side and slightly out of shot. But what I want to do next is go and get the brand new hatch and just put it in position just to see how it's going to look, just to see also whether the flange of the new hatch is going to cover up all the holes from the fixings for the old hatch. And once I get it in position, unfortunately I find that those holes are just peeking out, and that's fairly normal. I've replaced loads and loads of these hatches. Of course, it's hard to get it aligned when you're just looking at the outside of the hatch. It's also important to open up the hatch and have a look on the inside because you want it to look good from the outside, but you also want it to look good from the inside. So by opening up the hatch there, I have to hold it so the thing doesn't fall over on me, but I can just get everything aligned so it's kind of equal about the hole if you are in that berth and looking up, so that it's all going to look good. I'm also having a little look at how much filling I do or don't want to do just around the top edge of that aperture, because I want to fill it so that it comes up to the edge of the hatch, but I don't want to be filling it to the point where it is beyond the inside edge of the metal frame that makes up the bottom of the hatch. So I'm just having a little eyeball there just to see how it all looks. Because all those old fixing holes are going to be on show, I've decided to do little gel repairs on each one. So I'm just using a countersink bit here in my electric drill, so I just give them all a little bit of a whiz with the vacuum there just to suck up the dust, and then I've got a little bit more surface area in order to just drop a little bit of colour match gel coat into each of those holes. The holes need something in them, so it makes sense to do it with a bit of colour match gel, and then to the casual look as you go past, you won't see kind of any different coloured filler in all of those holes, and it will just look kind of like a factory finish on the deck when you look at the hatch. So here you can see I have put some colour match gel into all those little holes, and that's just curing up, and I have also done an initial fill around the very top edge just to bring that surface up to a flat finish. So here you can see I've got the cured gel coat that I've dropped in all those little holes, and what I'm doing here is I'm just removing the excess material fairly quickly with a little scraper. So what I'm actually using here is one of those snap-off blades you put in a retractable knife, and I use it a bit like a cabinet scraper. And you can come in, I've talked about this in some other videos, and you can come in and just remove kind of 80–90% of the excess gel coat that has been dropped into the repair that you're doing. Just rub it backwards and forwards, use it like a cabinet scraper, and just remove that material. It's now the next day, and hopefully the sound is working this morning, but you can see I continue to faff with this forward hatch hole. All the fixing holes that were here have all been filled with some gel coat, so they are kind of disappearing into the original gel, which is good. It still needs a wet sand, but it's looking pretty reasonable. And I've been filling this edge piece here because it just was going to look ugly. Now, I could have just covered this all in white sealant and stuck the hatch on and sort of forgotten about it, but what I'm planning to do is, having filled all this, and I need to put one more little fill in a couple of little places here, is to come back in and flow coat all of this up to here in white, and then I can put the hatch on, and then there'll be a very small seam of white sealant around the inside, which will look much neater than putting lots and lots of sealant in just to kind of hide all the cracks and stuff like that. So that is the plan. This area around the forward hatch has had one more fill and one more sand, and now I'm calling it good enough that I'm going to put some masking tape up around the edge of this, so around about there, all the way around. You can probably see where I've sanded up to, and then I'm going to give it one generous coat of gel coat all the way around there and see how that looks. Morning folks, I am still on the hatch. It's another beautiful day on the River Hamble, but I did have to walk away from this yesterday because frankly it was starting to piss me off. Sorry internet, I'm probably not supposed to swear, but sometimes there are jobs where you just go I want this to look nice because I hate it when something's been done and it just doesn't look quite right. That's why I wanted to re-gel all the way around here. But you know, when you start a job, sometimes you just start uncovering more and more issues. Well, it's been filled. I then sanded it. I then found more voids, which I then filled. I then sanded, and which uncovered some more voids in the gap between the hull and the deck, which was filled. And then it got gel coated, and then I sanded it, and then I sanded through the gel coat in some places. So I've re-gelled it again. And so that's where I am now. This has had 4 coats of white gel on it. Today, it is going to be finished. I'm going to sand this back with some 240 to knock down all the little high spots. I've got some 240 here. Then go through the grades and hopefully make it look good. I really don't want to sand through it again. There's probably a few places where it's not quite thick enough, but I'm going to be super careful. I'm going to get this done today, and then I'm going to get the new hatch screwed down, and then I'm not going to look at this hatch for a very long time. Just because I enjoy my job doesn't mean I enjoy every single element of my job, and sometimes you just want to pull your hair out with certain things that should be quick, should be easy, should get this knocked out in a couple of hours, and I'm still here a number of hours later still faffing with it. And that's why I don't do any fixed price work. All the work that I do for my customers is estimated in terms of how much it's going to cost in terms of time, but it's a boat, and actually it's an old boat, so sometimes things just get out of hand, but it's got to be done right. Anyway, c'est la vie, less talking, I've got to do some sanding. As you've seen, I have been sanding away on this. I've done 80 grit all the way around, and then I've done 240 grit all the way around. The bit that's kind of underneath and curved, which is off camera at the moment, it's this kind of bit here that goes in underneath. It's quite tricky, so I've been doing that by hand, but it's looking okay. I've burnt through a couple of places right on the very, very top edge, which is annoying, but not the end of the world, because I need to put a bead of sealant around it anyway when it all goes in. So I'm going to live with it and hope it doesn't get too much worse. If it does, I'll just have to come back in with a little bit of gel just there, just off camera, and I think a tiny bit at the front edge there, but it's tiny, it's barely worth mentioning. So next up, 400 grit, and then I'm on to wet sanding. Can't remember if I mentioned it before, but I use permanent marker as a guide coat. So I just put a bit on the gel coat, get some acetone on a rag, wipe it around, and it gets the marker pen into all the little scratches that we're trying to get rid of. So then you can sand until all the green or whatever colour you've got disappears, and you stop at that point and go no further and move up to the next grade and repeat. So that is a real lifesaver, and does make it really obvious how much more sanding you've got to do, or more importantly, when you need to stop, so that you don't keep going and burn through the gel that you've put on. Here it is, sanded to 400 grit. All nice and smooth. I've got to be honest, I did cheat very slightly. I had an area just here on the aft edge where I had sanded through, and off camera I've just re-gelled that little area, and there's a tiny little area here as well on the port side, but I don't know if that comes out well or not on the camera because it's so bright I can't actually see the screen, but hopefully you can see this lovely smooth finish. Right, next up I've got to come back in with 600 grit, 800 grit, 1000 grit, 1200 grit, and then I can give it a polish. But we're getting there slowly. It helps that it's a bloody lovely day, but I have had just about as much as I want of gel coat, sanding, filling, repairing for this week. It is Friday, so I'm going to get this done, get this hatch on, and then call it a day, I think. Well, I'm very pleased to say that all this sanding is done. It's been sanded back to about 1200. I could go further, but normally with a decent polish, you can take out the last remaining scratches and make it all nice and shiny. So I have my polisher here, just out of shot, and some finishing compound. And I'm going to give it all a good buff, and then I can finally get that hatch fitted onto the boat. Thank goodness for that, because it is getting grey and dark over there, so I'm up against it on time, I think, to get this done before it starts raining. Looking pretty nice. I'll give it a little buff up with the old microfiber, and then I'll give you a close-up. Hopefully it's worth all that effort. And there we go. It's struggling to focus a little bit, but you can see there's a nice shine on there. That should look nice and tidy when the hatch is in. There we go, that's a better shot. So you can see it looks nice and shiny when the camera focuses on what I want it to focus on. I'm going to call that good enough, because it's been a complete pain to do. So, time to put a hatch on. Thank goodness for that. When fitting a hatch, what I like to do is get everything kind of lined up exactly where it needs to be, and then put 1, 2 or possibly 3 fixings in. So I drill the 2 or 3 holes that are going to hold the hatch in place, and then I can go around knowing that the hatch isn't going to move and mark off all the other holes that I need to make. And what I actually did here was then before fitting the hatch, went around with a countersink tool just in the very, very top of each of those fixings. And by doing that, when you put your screw in, it stops the gel coat from cracking just around the exterior of the hole. And obviously what you can see here, sealant on, screws all in, then I can clean up the squeeze out, and then she is all done. Now, because I am much, much better at fixing boats than I am making videos, I didn't switch my microphone on again, so I'm doing another voiceover. And I can't actually remember what I was saying here, other than thank goodness it was probably all done. But what was very, very pleasing was closing this hatch and then removing the kind of protective film that is on the top of the hatch. Now, you might think that's a strange thing to do because you want to keep the protective film on there, but actually, when this protective film, because it's paper-based, gets wet, it makes a real mess, and it makes it really, really difficult to remove that protective film sometime down the line. So I remove it at this stage, and I just am aware when I'm moving around on the deck not to kind of stand on the hatch, scratch it up, or put anything on it, so that it looks all nice and factory fresh for when we eventually get the boat in the water. And doesn't that look good? I was well pleased with that, as was the owner when I sent him some pictures. As you can see, there's a few drops of water on there now. I got this hatch on literally about 3 minutes before the rain started falling down, but you can see here the difference between the old hatch, which had been on the boat for getting on for 50 years, and the new hatch. And that was a very, very worthwhile upgrade. So the old one was a Gibo hatch, the new one is a Gibo hatch, and with the new windows it's looking pretty smart. And there's a lot of junk on deck that needs to go in the bin. Next up, I've got to just put a little bit of a bead of sealant around the inside, just to tidy that up, just to fill that little gap, and then I can call this hatch 100% completely finished. Another week has started. It's not quite so sunny today, as you can see behind me, but what you can also possibly see behind me, just there, is the new hatch which goes in the middle of the boat. It's just been delivered. I'll show you the old one, and we'll see what the new one looks like. So externally, this middle hatch is in much the same condition as the forward hatch, as in it is original and pretty shagged, so I'm going to whip that out and replace it with one that looks a little bit more like that. Internally you can see I've got this horrible kind of painty stuff or gel, I'm not entirely sure what it is, all the way around the inside, which looks disgusting. So I'm going to get the hatch off and see if I can gently sand that back with maybe some 240 or some 400 just to see if I can make it look decent. But I strongly suspect I'll be doing what I needed to do on the forward hatch to tidy it up, which was just to prep all this and re-gel it, polish it, what have you, and then fit the new hatch. So I'm going to crack on. You've seen all this before. I'm going to set up a time lapse and we'll see how we go. So as you've seen, this has had some repairs done on all the little, if I can get the camera on it, all the little holes that were the fixing holes, and I have re-gelled the inside all the way around, so that's all kind of lumpy bumpy as you'd expect given that it's been brushed on. So that has left a slightly sticky finish. I was thinking about sanding it and then putting some more on, but I think I'm just going to go straight ahead with putting another 2 coats of gel on there. So I'm going to have kind of 4 coats in total, and that's going to give me plenty of material to then sand back and refinish. Well, thank you very much for watching. As you can possibly hear, it is still raining. That's because I'm recording this outro immediately after recording the intro. So there's a bit of behind the scenes for you at Refit and so, oh, it's just stopping. Ooh, that's good, because I've got to move some stuff from the van up to the boat. Anyway, windows are done, Hatches are done. Hope you found that interesting. There's lots of stuff that has also been happening since I recorded that, some of which I've recorded, some of which I haven't, but I will keep producing videos on the refit of this boat, so stay tuned to Refit and Sail. If you want to support the channel, there is a link down in the description, down there. There's a link. I don't do Patreon, I don't sell t-shirts, I don't do any of that stuff, but if you want to support the show, if you just want to buy me a beer because you've enjoyed my video or you've learned something, you can go to that link and you can send me £5, $10, 15 quid, 20 yen, I don't know, euros, I don't mind what it is. I really appreciate it. It helps pay for things like mics, lighting, hopefully a better camera at some point. And sometimes it just gets spent on beer, so I hope that's okay. Thank you very much again for watching. Thank you very much to those that donate and support the channel. I really appreciate it. I will see you next time. Bye for now.